Hey guys, welcome to Knockers on the Bottom. I'm your host, Jay Mill, Jay Miller if you like. Just want to get into some observations here from the blue-white practice. It's a little bit different than years past, blue-white scrimmage, a lot more teamwork in the years past, but today's practice had some really good pace to it. Want to jump into some of the people that stood out to me while watching. Maris Leofau is right at the top of the list. He got into the backfield several times. It was more towards the end of the sessions, but man, he was active. There's definitely a couple of times where, the defense showed some pressure from one way, and then Maris would get right up in there. And there's a couple of times where he definitely would have had a sack on whoever was playing quarterback. In particular, one time where Dak was there and he closed in and he got in there. And also the other rookie second-round pick, Marshawn Nealon, also got in there pretty easily as well. Both look really good. I like what I saw from Awesome Richards. He got some first-team reps at left tackle. Guyton was gone. Also, you had Chuma Doga dealing with some injury issues, so Awesome Richards took the bulk of the reps. His footwork looks really good. He's really athletic. He looks like he could block someone at this level. Didn't see much of him last year. Didn't really notice him at all. This year in camp, noticed him a few times, but really noticed him a lot in today's practice. Some of the other things I noticed, Trey Lance out there. A lot of times people have been complaining about his throws to the outside, particularly outside of the numbers. He had a few throws today that were really nice outside of the numbers. Where I noticed him having trouble was actually dropping back. He had a couple of times where the defense was in his face pretty much right away. So either the offensive line didn't block it up well or he didn't see pre-snap to set up the protections well. Mike Zimmer has been throwing a lot at the offense. He's been showing them a lot of sim pressures from one place, but then bringing actual pressure from somewhere else, dropping people into coverage that you expect to come, and making people rush that you expect to be dropping into coverage, which I think is awesome. Awesome look for this offense, considering that not only Trey Lance not having played much, Cooper Rush is a pretty safe guy. But what I'm really excited about is Dak Prescott generally has had problems in the past with not necessarily seeing linebackers that drop into zones that he didn't think they were going to drop into. I specifically remember a Dallas Cowboys game a couple of years ago where they're beating up on the Commanders and they were up, 20-7 or 20-3 or 22-7, something like that. And Dak Prescott drops back, in the second half of the game to make a pass to the offense's left, defense's right side, and linebacker just dropped into coverage, picked them off, and took it all the way back. So it's nice to see some of that in camp. This way, maybe we can have less of those mistakes this year. Dak is not a very mistake-prone quarterback. That's actually one of his strong points, is taking care of the ball. But I still like that Mike Zimmer is showing some of this really good work to them as far as dropping into different places that the quarterbacks might not be expecting. It's also great work for the offensive line because pre-snap, Dak is one of the best in the league at pre-snap, and I think it really helps the offensive line pass block well because he really recognizes a lot of things. But it's also hard after the snap where you go up to the line, you make all your checks, you make all your adjustments, and now the defense is doing something that you hadn't checked or you hadn't adjusted, and the offensive line has to adjust on the fly. They're getting caught off guard, kind of playing on their heels. It's nice to see if they can, give Dak Prescott that extra millisecond or give Trey Lance or Cooper Rush that extra millisecond to get that pass completed. And we saw that a few times today from Dak. We didn't see so much of that from Cooper or from Trey Lance. Like I said, Trey Lance was getting pressure right in his face a few times. He had to just take off and run. And I think some of that is on him as well as on the offensive line. Also, I did notice a few times where Mozzie Smith was playing with some power off the line of scrimmage, which allowed some of the linebackers to flow freely to the ball. He helped some of those sim pressures come, specifically on one of the plays where I was talking about Leofau getting in Dak's face right away. I mean, Mozzie just went and just put himself right in Zach Martin's lap. And Zach Martin was handling him one-on-one, and the other linemen were tied up, and boom, here comes Maris Leofau. So that doesn't happen if Mozzie gets blown off the ball, and now Zach is like, hey, blew this guy up. Leofau's coming. I can adjust and kind of touch him too and keep him from getting to my quarterback. But, yeah, that wasn't allowed to happen. Maris got in right away. Kalen Carson showing up again and again today. I know I just said again 3 times, but it might have been 6 or 7 times that the guy showed up. There was a nice play in the back of the end zone to the offense's left, defense's right, where the throw went there. Throw was pretty good. Looked like the receiver's going to come down with the ball, and at the last second, he punches it out. Some other plays that looked good. I saw Jordan Lewis pick up the tight end on a leak out. There was a nice play in the red zone period where, the Dak sent the tight end the opposite way underneath, tried to roll across the formation. And normally, with all the action going on the opposite way, it's really easy for that tight end to kind of sneak out into the, defense's right side and not really be covered because all the action going the other way. You kind of get some trash a lot of times that the cornerbacks get caught up in. But Jordan Lewis saw it, snuffed it out right away, and had some good coverage on Jake Ferguson, and that made Dak have to go a different way with the ball. Also, I noticed a couple of times the new guy, Muhammad, beating his guy right off the snap. He showed some juice on the edge. Kind of makes me feel, a little bit excited. I know I like to temper expectations because this is practice, and a lot of times you see a lot of the same formations, a lot of the same plays. You're going up against the same guys every day. You watch a lot of tape, so you get to break down the weaknesses of the team you're playing against. I like to liken it to a NBA playoff series, how you're playing 7 games against the same team. And, the first couple of games, there's some stuff that you haven't seen. There's some adjusting and readjusting. But by the time you get to game 3 or 4, everybody kind of knows what the other one is going to do. And there's no more adjusting. Now your talent just kind of starts to win out. A lot of times that's what we see here in training camp. As these guys get to go through the process and they're seeing the same plays and the same player day after day, a lot of times that talent starts to win out. But Muhammad's new here, you know what I'm saying? So we haven't seen him as much. He hasn't seen them as much. I'd be interested to see as the days go along and some of these tackles get to take a look at him over and over again, will he start getting blocked up? Tyron Billy Johnson, he didn't have as much of a standout day as he's been having in camp. It wasn't necessarily because he wasn't running good routes or that his hands were off. It was just he kind of got blanketed, and the quarterbacks were kind of going a little bit of a different way today. So it looked like he kind of had one of his first non-standout days of camp. It'll be interesting to see how he adjusts going forward. Receiver is one of those positions where you have to have constant standout days in order to separate yourself from everybody else in the competition. So it'll be nice to see some of that going on. Nashawn Wright continues to work with the first team when Trayvon Diggs is getting closer to coming back and working with the team, but they still are trotting Nashawn Wright out there pretty consistently. So it makes me feel like he's definitely solidifying the cornerback 4 place on the roster. To the center battle, Cooper Beebe seems to still be having just a smidge of trouble with the snap. I know him and Cooper Rush had a botched exchange today in one of the offensive periods where it was kind of they were working the situation where, it's late in the game. We have to get into either field goal range or score a touchdown. We've got 1 or 2 passes to go, and then whatever happens, we're going to roll the field goal team out there and take one. And him and Cooper Beebe couldn't get that together. The chemistry wasn't quite on, and the snap got fumbled, and, the offense lost that possession. I do think as he continues to work on his snapping, that'll get better. It's kind of hard sometimes for these guys. I'm just now finding out Cooper Beebe hasn't played center since his high school career. So he didn't play center in college at all. And he really hasn't played center, pretty much since he was an early teenager. So it's going to be a little tough for him to come in right away and take that job away from Brock Hoffman. And then speaking of Brock Hoffman, all his snaps were perfect today. He looked good in the team drills. He looked like he didn't have too much of a problem, like I said, playing against power. I know there were some times where Mozzie Smith was lined up against him, and he didn't get any push, but he didn't also get pushed back into the lap of the quarterback at all. So he was doing pretty well. Now, Mozzie today, it was a little odd because they kind of had Golston and Osa pretty much lined up at defensive tackle for most of these team reps. And then they would bring in Mozzie when maybe they thought it was a quote-unquote run situation, not necessarily a pass situation, which was also interesting, that Chauncey Golston was getting a lot of the reps at the defensive tackle, and honestly, it looked like they had 2-3 techniques in there, so I'm guessing maybe that's a package that they're working on for specifically passing situations. So it'll be interesting to see as the season goes along if a lot of teams will roll out 21 personnel and kind of show, hey, we're looking like we're going into a pass set and then try to run against that defensive line set of the Cowboys. Golston does have some great athleticism, and it looks like, his tweener style is working for him a lot in a lot of these situations, but I don't know necessarily how that's going to work. If they lined up, I don't think Nick Chubb's coming to town week 1 with the Browns, but I do know that, King Henry is coming to town week 2 with the Baltimore Ravens, and then you also have Lamar Jackson as well. And the Ravens are a great running team, so it'll be interesting to see if the Cowboys try to deploy that in certain situations where they think they have an advantage on a passing down, and some of these teams try to exploit it and run in third down situations that they normally wouldn't run down in. And by that I mean 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, situations that normally call for a pass, pretty much anything longer than 3rd and 3, where teams are normally dropping back to get that first down. You always have to look out for the quarterback there in Baltimore. He's always willing to take off, and no matter what the situation is, he can be dangerous and get a first down and probably take it to the house. But it'll be interesting also to see with King Henry in the backfield there, if they try to exploit that. Same thing with a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are always going to try to do some things that are a little bit different than normal. Even teams that are in the Cowboys division, they're going to be looking at this tape because it's out there for everybody else to look at and see some of these defensive sets that the Cowboys are lining up in and try to exploit that. As far as the people that you normally look for, Brandon Cooks looked okay in practice today. He didn't really do much. Looks like they held him out of most of the drills. There was a lot of other people getting held out. Eric Hendricks wasn't there today. I know Izzy McQuamu's dealing with an injury as well, so he wasn't there today. Tyler Guyton's dealing with some sickness, so you didn't get to see any of him today. Demarion Overshown, he flashed a bit, but they didn't really overwork him. No Trayvon Diggs. So it was a really interesting blue-white practice from the standpoint of we didn't get to see as much as we normally get to see. I got to see a little bit of Nathaniel Pete in there as well. I know we're all looking at Zeke, and we're all looking at Royce Freeman, and we're all looking at Hunter Lipke, and Rico Dowdo, Fast Money Rico. But I actually got to see Nathaniel Pete have a nice pickup when he came out there with the threes as well. There was a pass rusher coming off the edge, and the tackle wasn't taking that responsibility. He took someone else. It might have been a blitz. It might have been a stunt. I have to go back and take a little bit deeper of a look. But Nathaniel Pete slid to the right nicely. Boom, picked it up. Trey Lance threw the pass, but he overthrew Racey McMath in the end zone, and it was incomplete. It didn't look like too bad of a throw. I do still feel like we're in that stage of everybody kind of trying to pile on Trey Lance a little bit. But it wasn't necessarily a bad throw. It was just kind of a miss pass. It is one of those things that happen. It looked like the pressure was coming. He had a little more time maybe than he thought he had. So he tried to release the ball and kind of get it into the end zone. But it didn't quite work out for him. But other than that, it was a pretty decent practice. I did notice Junior Fehoko getting dug out on the inside once more. I know they're trying to give him every chance with Sam Williams not necessarily being there anymore with the injury. So they're trying to, rotate some other guys in and giving them a chance to show some stuff and flash. But Junior Fehoko, he's got an uphill climb. Same thing with Ezekiel Elliott. He had a handoff off the right side. Everything was blocked up well, just fell to the ground. Looked like he might have tripped over the offensive tackle's foot, maybe. But again, he's a running back. You want to see some better footwork there, especially when the play is blocked up pretty nice. But all in all, those are my observations from the blue-white practice. They're calling it the blue-white practice this year, not necessarily the blue-white scrimmage. I know the Rams are going to be coming to town. I think the Cowboys definitely need to take a look at their running back room. And take a look at adding some things. I do think they're going to go within. They added Muhammad and they added the other, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was suspended for the gambling. He's back now, and they added him as well as an edge. But I do think it's probably going to be Nealand first off the bench. He's going to get his first chance. These preseason games are probably going to mean a little bit more towards that stuff too. Depending on how he performs in the preseason is going to depend on how much trust the Cowboys have in him, because he looks really nice in camp. Looks like he could be a starter, and looks like he's probably better than some of the fans reacted when he got drafted. I know it was a lot of, who's this guy? Why did we draft this guy? I don't know this guy's name. But a lot of times, Will McClay is up in there, masterminding and brainstorming some things, and he's watching a lot more guys, and those scouts are watching a lot more guys than we get to watch. So I'm excited to see when the games kick off next week for the preseason how some of these young guys look. If Mirsley Afau is able to get some of the same pressure that he got today, next week. If Marshawn Nealand is able to show some bend around the edge and show some power, if Mozzie Smith is able to command double teams the same way he has been, if Tyron Billy Johnson is able to beat some of these other cornerbacks, it's going to be very interesting to see, and we'll see a lot more movement, up and down the depth chart as we go here. And, in a couple of days, I'll also release my first 53-man roster projection for the year. I kind of wanted to hold off until we got some padded practices under our belt. But now that we have, I've gotten to see a little bit more from some of the linemen and some of the defensive linemen than we were getting to see before. Got to feel a little bit more out about guys like Brock Hoffman, who I thought might not be as good as he has been, or Cooper Beebe, who I thought might be better than he has been. So it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. But that's all I got for you today. If you like the video, subscribe. If there's anything you want me to cover in the future, please comment below. But thank you for, viewing. This is J Mill. J Miller if you like. Knockers on the bottom. Peace.